Walk into any British living room in 1994 and you wouldn't find a sleek, invisible soundbar hidden under a paper-thin telly. Instead, you'd find a monument, a towering stack of silver or black, brushed aluminium that dominated the corner of the lounge like a technological cathedral. It was the Hi-Fi Stack, a collection of dedicated separates that cost a month's salary and required a PhD in cable management just to plug in. We spent our Saturday mornings at Richer Sounds or Comet, debating the merits of gold-plated phono leads and the warmth of a Belt-Drive turntable. But today, that altar of audio has vanished. It's been replaced by a plastic puck in the corner that streams compressed files from a server in California. We traded the tactile majesty of a Graphic Equaliser for the invisible convenience of a smartphone. Today, we are performing an autopsy on 20 hi-fi components that disappeared from the British home. And number one, it was the ultimate status symbol of the 80s executive, a piece of kit so heavy it could break a coffee table. If you miss the click of a glass cabinet door, welcome to dial-up memories. Before we dive into the hardware, we have to talk about the ritual. In the late 20th century, listening to music in Britain was a physical activity. You didn't just play a track, you operated a machine. According to UK retail data from the early 90s, the audio separates market was worth hundreds of millions of pounds. Brands like Arkham, Cambridge Audio, and NAD were household names for anyone who took their Britpop or classic rock seriously. £100 in 1990 is worth about £240 today, and a mid-range system would easily set you back £1,000. We didn't mind the cost because we were buying forever gear. These were single-purpose tools built for one thing: high-fidelity sound. Today, your smart speaker is a multi-purpose computer that happens to have a tiny driver inside. We lost the hi-fi and we gained utility. Let's look at the giants that once ruled our lounges. Number 20, the Graphic Equaliser. Nothing said I take music seriously like a dedicated Graphic Equaliser separate. This was the flashy heart of the stack, usually featuring 2 rows of 10 or 12 sliders. In the 90s, we were obsessed with the V-shaped setting, boosting the bass until the floorboards vibrated and cranking the treble until the cymbals pierced your eardrums. It had a vacuum fluorescent display, those glowing green or amber bars that danced to the beat. It was hypnotic. It didn't actually make the music better, most purists hated them, but it gave you the feeling of being a sound engineer in your own semi-detached house. You'd sit there in the dark, watching the spectrum analyzer jump, feeling like you were in control of the frequencies. Today, that physical interaction is gone. Your equalizer is a hidden menu in an app with 3 digital sliders that have no soul. We lost the joy of the physical flick and the hypnotic glow of the green bars. Number 19, the Belt-Drive Turntable. Long before the vinyl revival made turntables a hipster accessory, a Belt-Drive deck from Rega, Dual, or Linn was the foundation of a British home. This wasn't about being trendy, it was about the only way to get high-quality sound. We worried about wow and flutter like it was a medical condition. We carefully balanced the tone arm, adjusted the counterweight, and obsessed over the stylus needle. There was a specific smell to a new record, a mix of PVC and cardboard, and a specific sound when the needle hit the groove, that low-frequency thump that told you the music was coming. The ritual of cleaning the dust off with a carbon fiber brush was a sacred act. Today, the reliable £150 deck you bought at Dixon's has been replaced by £20 plastic toys with built-in speakers that ruin your records. We lost the affordable precision of the Belt-Drive era. Number 18, the Twin Tape Deck. The Twin Tape Deck was the original social network for British teenagers. If you wanted to share music in 1992, you didn't send a link, you dubbed a tape. These machines were engineering marvels of the analog age. You'd put the original album in Deck A, a blank TDK or Maxell D90 in Deck B, and hit high-speed dubbing. The music would squeal at double speed through the speakers, and 10 minutes later, you had a pirate copy for your Walkman. The mechanical thud of the play button and the soft touch eject that glided open with a puff of air were sensory experiences. We spent hours designing the J-cards, writing the track lists in tiny handwriting. Today, we share music with a tap, but we've lost the 40-minute ritual of creating something physical for a friend. Number 17, the glass-fronted hi-fi cabinet. The hardware needed a home, and in the UK, that home was a fake mahogany or black ash cabinet. It was a towering piece of furniture that anchored the entire lounge. It had a magnetic glass door that made a very specific click-clack sound when you closed it, and a lift-up lid for the turntable. You had to be careful not to slam it, or the needle would skip. The bottom section was filled with LPs and cassette towers. It was a statement of cultural intent. Today, our gadgets are designed to be invisible. We have speakers that look like lamps and soundbars that hide under the telly. The hi-fi cabinet was an altar. Today's tech is just an appliance. Number 16, the AM/FM stereo tuner. Before DAB radio and internet streams, we had the tuner. This was a dedicated separate with a massive, weighted aluminium dial. Spinning that dial across the frequencies felt like operating a precision safe. You'd hunt for BBC, Radio 1, Capital, or a local pirate station, watching the signal strength needles flicker, or the stereo light turn bright red when you hit the sweet spot. There was a magic to pulling music out of the static and the airwaves. You felt connected to the transmitter. Today, radio is just a list of names on a screen. You don't tune anything. You just select a stream. We lost the hunt for the frequency. Number 15, the Integrated Amplifier. The heavy heart of the stack. Whether it was an NAD3020 or a chunky Marantz, the amplifier was a box of pure purpose. It was a giant transformer and a row of chunky input buttons labeled phono, CD, and aux. It had a physical weight. If you couldn't feel the heft when you picked it up, it wasn't worth the money. The volume knob had a resistance to it, a smooth, heavy glide that made you feel the power you were about to unleash on the neighbours. It got warm to the touch after an hour of use, smelling slightly of hot dust and electronics. Today's amplifiers are tiny chips hidden inside active speakers. They are efficient, but they have no gravity. They don't feel like they are driving anything. They just feel like they are processing data. Number 14, the floor-standing speakers. In the 90s, we didn't want discrete audio. We wanted two wooden monoliths from Mission, Wharfedale, or Tannoy that stood a meter high and dominated the room. They sat on metal spikes to decouple them from the floor, which usually meant permanent holes in the carpet that your mum would complain about for years. They were a physical presence. When you played a record, you could feel the air moving. Today, we have smart speakers the size of a grapefruit. They use digital signal processing to fake the bass that these giants produced with pure volume and physics. We traded the soundstage for a monopoint source that hides in the corner. Number 13, the CD player. When the CD arrived, it was the future. A Technics or Sony player with 1-bit mash or bitstream technology was the height of 90s sophistication. The tray opened with a silent, oily smoothness that made you feel like you were operating a spacecraft. We treated the discs like holy relics, obsessed with disc rot and fingerprints. It was the first time we saw track 1 appear instantly on a digital display. It was the bridge between the analog past and the digital void. Today, we stream lossless files, but we've lost the physical connection to the album art and the deliberate act of choosing a disc. Number 12, the Midi system. For those who couldn't afford a £1,000 stack of separates from a specialist, there was the Argos favorite, the Midi system. It was a single plastic unit, often from Iowa or Kenwood, designed to look like it was made of separates. It had X-bass buttons, huge plastic volume wheels that spun forever, and more flashing LEDs than a disco. It wasn't high fidelity, but it was yours. It was the center of every British teenager's bedroom in 1995. It was the gateway drug to real audio. Number 11, the cassette storage tower, the library of the 90s home. These were plastic, spring-loaded racks, usually holding 20 or 40 tapes that sat next to the hi-fi. You'd press a button, and the tape would eject towards you with a satisfying mechanical snap. It was how we curated our lives. You could see the handwritten spines, mixtapes from exes, radio recordings, and the albums you saved up 3 weeks of pocket money for. Today, your library is a database on a server. You can't see the history of your listening habits on a shelf. You can't feel the collection. We are halfway through the 20 components that once made the British lounge a temple of sound. We've looked at the towers of plastic and wood that defined the early 90s, but we're about to get into the niche obsessions. The pieces of kit that proved your dad was a secret audiophile or just had too much money to spend at the local Comet or richer sounds. If you remember the smell of a warm amplifier on a rainy Tuesday while listening to urban hymns, hit that subscribe button. We are dial-up memories, and we are reclaiming the hardware of the British past. Let's get back to the list. Because number 10 is the device that almost saved the analog world from the digital revolution. Number 10, the Minidisc. Britain was one of the few places where Sony's Minidisc actually became a cult hit. The home deck separate was a marvel of late 90s engineering. It looked like a CD player, but it felt like the future. You could edit tracks, move them around, and type in titles using a tiny, clicky remote. The clack-whir of the disc inserting was the most futuristic sound in the lounge. It was the bridge between the tape and the MP3. It was a victim of the iPod, but for a few years, every tech dad in the UK had a mini-disc separate in his stack. It was the last time digital music felt like a physical object you could hold. Number 9, the banana plug. This was the secret handshake of the hi-fi world. Most people just twisted bare copper wire into a spring clip and hoped for the best. But if you were serious, you used banana plugs. It was a blue-collar engineering task we all performed behind the sofa, stripping the insulation with our teeth and tightening the tiny screws. It felt professional. It felt like you were building a bridge to the music. Today, you pair a speaker via Bluetooth. There is no physical connection, no copper, and therefore no physical satisfaction when the signal finally hits. Number 8, the Phono Pre-Amp. As amplifiers started getting cheaper and digital in the late 90s, manufacturers stopped including the phono input to save a few quid. Suddenly, your turntable was silent. You had to buy a separate little box, the Phono Pre-Amp, just to hear your records. It was the first sign that the industry was moving away from the analog soul of the hi-fi. It was a tax on tradition, a clunky extra box that sat behind the stack, gathering dust. It was the beginning of the end for the all-in-one stack. Number 7, the remote control, the coffee table Slab. Hi-fi remotes in the 90s were massive. They didn't just have volume buttons, they had 50 tiny rubber keys because they had to control every single separate component. They were usually black plastic with glow-in-the-dark buttons for the essentials. They were the scepter of the house. The man of the lounge held the remote. Today, you control your audio with the same device you use to look at work emails. The audio remote as a dedicated physical tool for pleasure is a dead concept. Number 6, the headphone jack, the 6.35mm giant. Every hi-fi had a big headphone jack. You couldn't use your Walkman headphones without an adapter. Plugging in a pair of heavy Sennheisers and feeling that solid metallic click meant you were entering a private world of high-fidelity sound. It was a physical tether to the machine. Today, we have auto-pairing AirPods that fall out of our ears. We lost the tether that forced us to sit down, stay still, and actually listen to an entire side of an album. Number 5, the surround sound processor. Before Dolby Atmos was a line of code in a soundbar, we had Dolby Pro Logic. It was a separate box that tried to turn a stereo signal into a theater experience. It usually had a stadium or jazz club setting that just added a load of weird echo to the vocals. It was the start of the home cinema craze that eventually killed the stereo hi-fi. It was a clunky, noisy, and wonderful attempt to bring the Leicester Square Odeon experience into a terraced house in Slough. It was the moment we started looking at the screen more than we listened to the speakers. Number 4, the CD storage spinning rack. The 90s version of a library. A 6-foot tall wire or plastic rack that held 100 CDs and spun on a lazy Susan. It was a status symbol of your cultural capital. You could browse your friends' music collections just by walking over to the corner of the lounge. It was a social experience. Today, browsing music is a solitary act on a glass screen. You don't know what your friends are listening to unless an algorithm tells you. The spinning rack was the social media of the 90s British lounge. Number 3, the reel-to-reel. By 1990, these were vintage, but many high-end British stacks still featured an old Akai or Revox reel-to-reel sitting at the top. They were the ultimate dad flex. Watching the large 10-inch tapes spin slowly was hypnotic, a visual representation of the music's physical existence. It smelled of ozone and magnetic tape. They represented an era of permanence and mechanical perfection that the digital world has completely erased. It was audio engineering in its purest form. No chips, no software, just motors and magnets. When it played, you were watching a machine breathe. Number 2, the mains conditioner, the ultimate dad tech purchase. This was a box that supposedly cleaned the electricity coming from the wall to make the music sound crisper. It cost £200, a fortune in 1994, and was probably just a fancy fuse box with some copper coils. But it represented the obsession. We cared enough about our music to worry about the quality of the power entering the house from the national grid. We were willing to pay for the idea of purity. It was the peak of the hi-fi craze, where the equipment became more important than the music itself. We are at the final item, the king of the hi-fi stack, the one component that signaled the death of the analog era and the absolute peak of mechanical digital technology. It was the most expensive thing in the lounge, a status symbol that told your neighbours you had truly made it. Before we reveal it, tell me in the comments, what was the very first album you played on your first proper system? Let's look at the number 1 icon of the vanished hi-fi. Number 1, the LaserDisc. In 1995, if you walked into a house and saw a machine that played digital video off a disc the size of a family pizza, you knew that person was living in the year 3000. The LaserDisc Player was the absolute peak of the mechanical digital era. It was a separate that bridged the gap between the hi-fi stack and the TV. It cost £600, about £1,400 today, and the discs were £30 each, the price of 10 CDs. It was success personified. It vanished because it was too big and too loud, replaced by the tiny, efficient, and ultimately soulless DVD. But the DVD didn't have the presence of the LaserDisc. The LaserDisc Player was the final monster of the lounge. It was the last time technology felt heavy and important. Today, we have 4K streams that look better, but they don't feel like anything. We lost the scale of the experience. We traded the pizza-sized disc for a packet of crisps-sized file, and in the process, we lost the feeling that we were owning the culture. The hi-fi stack died when we decided that invisibility was more important than impact. We replaced the Tower of Power with a soundbar of silence, and our living rooms have felt empty ever since. The British hi-fi stack wasn't just a way to play music, it was a hobby. It was a weekend spent at Richer Sounds in the rain, carrying heavy boxes to the car. It was the pride of showing off your separates to your mates while drinking a lukewarm tea. Today, audio is a utility. It's like water or gas. You turn it on and it's there. But there is no soul in a utility. There is no warmth in a cloud server. We've gained the whole world of music, but we've lost the ritual of listening. We've gained convenience, but we've lost quality. Which part of the hi-fi stack do you miss the most? Was it the glowing equalizer, the high-speed dubbing, or the clack of the Minidisc? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to see what happened to the work part of our lives when the office gadgets died, how we went from the 1985 telex to the 2026 Slack notification, check out the video on your screen right now. Thanks for watching Dial-Up Memories. Put on a record and sit down. See you in the next one.